Hi there, Brian here once again with just a quick video to fill in the gap while I paint and edit some of my minis for my next few uploads. In those videos I want to show you how to use oil washing for vehicles and scenery. But while I'm preparing my Gladiator tank for priming, I thought you may find it useful to see how I magnetised it before it's completely painted. Once it's painted, I can deploy all three variants on the battlefield and save myself a lot of cash for a relatively small investment. I magnetised this back in February, so while I don't have any footage from back then, I was able to film a small section using a spare part to give you an idea of the technique that I use for drilling. Of course, I will talk over the tools that I used and show you the magnet placements that I found the most useful. So let's get started. First off, you're going to need a pin vise. Now, a pin vise is a very useful tool for anyone who works with small scale miniatures or modelling. Many of you are already going to have one, because since I was last in the hobby, drilling out gun barrels is now pretty much common practice. But they aren't something I remember being that common back in the 90s when I last played Warhammer. So I have here the standard pin vise from the Army Painter. This cost me about £12 and it comes with drill bits of different sizes. But none are large enough for the magnets I'm going to be using in this video. For that you're going to need a 3mm drill bit just like this one. But you can find these in almost any UK hardware store. Now, the Army Painter pin vise also comes with different sizes of collet. Now, one of these should be big enough to hold your 3mm drill bit. That's why I'd recommend buying this one. Next, you're going to need some super glue, and then you're going to need something preferably non-metallic to help you place the magnet. I like to use these little coffee stirrers. You can get them from almost any coffee shop in the UK. For magnets, I'm going to use neodymium magnets of two different sizes. Both are 3mm in diameter, but one set is 2mm thick and the other's only 1mm thick. N42 is the rating of the magnet strength, and from my research on forums and places like Reddit etc, these seem to be the best overall type to use. 2mm thick magnets are really good for heavier parts like arms or attaching a miniature to its base. The 1mm magnets are really good for areas where the plastic's very thin. For example, on a Gladiator that would be the Sponsons, or delicate small parts, small weapons, things like that. I'm going to use a spare part here to provide an example of the technique I use to drill. First I take my safety pin and then push it into the plastic, where I think the middle of the magnet is going to go. This helps to prevent the drill bit slipping on the smooth plastic. Next I take a small drill bit, usually the smallest that I have, and I make a pilot hole. This doesn't need to be very deep, maybe only 1mm. This is going to help guide the 3mm drill bit and again stop it from slipping at the start. And that's it. All you have to do is give your magnet a dab of super glue and simply push it into place. Let me show you the tank so far. I've left some areas unglued for the ease of priming and painting. The turret I will probably leave unattached because it makes it much easier to transport to and from games. Also, inside the tank is a really good place to store the spare weapons. Also, I haven't glued in the sponson brackets either. Now I probably will glue these in place eventually because I don't really need them to rotate at all, and they have a habit of falling out and getting lost. Finally, the anti-grav brackets here are just held on with a bit of blue tack. That's so that I don't lose them and they can be easily removed for painting. So while we're here, let's start with magnetising the base. As you can see, I've got two magnets in both the base and the tank. This is to help counterbalance the tank and keep it stable. Now you should only need one, but I found that drilling into the clear plastic column wasn't quite as easy as the grey plastic used on the miniatures. It's much harder and much more brittle. As a result, the hole that I drilled in the clear plastic was quite rough, so I couldn't get the magnet flush before the super glue dried. This meant that there was a slight wobble when the tank was placed on top, hence the second magnet to hold it steady. Now I'm sure you've noticed by this stage the paint marks, so in trying to locate where a magnet should go, I like to place the easiest magnet first. So in this case, it's the clear plastic base. Then, once it's ready, I put a drop of white paint onto the magnet and simply place that part where I want it to go. In this case, the bottom of the tank and the clear plastic column has indents we were supposed to place glue, so lining these up was really simple. This should leave you with a white mark in the appropriate location that you need to drill. Let's move on to the next easiest part, the turret. Now, I did all this before gluing on the bottom of the turret, but I still think you could do it at this stage. Now, you can see here that at one point I was going to place magnets on the side of each cannon. Now, that was from another guide that I was going to follow, but I suddenly realised it required 8 magnets. That's 2 per gun and then 2 in the turret. My method only uses 1 magnet per gun, and it achieves the same effect with less chances of making any mistakes with the magnet polarity. You can see here that I placed 1 magnet just inside the turret slot. There's no need to drill, and I used a 1mm thick magnet. Next, I gave that a dab of paint, and I put each weapon into place one by one. You can see here the residue of the paint marker that gave me the drilling location on each weapon. Then I removed the plastic pegs from the side of each cannon. I found this made it much easier to put the weapons into place, and it gave me some wiggle room to correct any slight alignment issues with the magnets. I think it works really well. 3 weapons, 4 magnets used, very economical. The sponsons were a little bit more complicated and they needed some experimentation. These kits only come with 1 bracket but 2 different covers. The cover for the multi-melta and the Tempest bolters is larger than the cover for the storm bolters, as you can see here. So when the storm bolters are placed into these covers, they do fit, but they're kind of swallowed up and they remain in the outward position. I could have found a spare part online and had both, but, well, to be totally honest, I just couldn't be bothered. Life's too short. So, before gluing this bracket into the cover, I drilled out a little bit of extra space into the recess where the guns would insert. This makes it ideal for holding a magnet. It doesn't take much, perhaps just 2 or 3 turns of the drill. Then I placed a single 2mm magnet into that hole for extra strength. You can see here that I did drill out both areas, but that was more of a fail-safe than anything, just in case I made a mistake. On the gun arm, I simply cut off the plastic pegs, and this gives you the perfect marker for drilling and placing a 1mm thick magnet. And that for me was the hardest part done. The gun barrel placements themselves were actually really easy. Shaving off the little plastic peg gives you another ideal marker for drilling the holes, and you can use either a 1mm or a 2mm magnet here because the plastic's quite thick. I think I used 2mm on the gun arm for extra strength, and then 1mm on the gun barrels. The gun barrels are also very easy to drill, but be careful, they're small and fragile. The gap on the back, where the plastic peg is supposed to be glued into, is another ideal marker for drilling and placing your magnet. Just a warning though, really allow these to fuse overnight with polystyrene cement, otherwise your drill bit's just going to prise them apart. It's even better if you can hold them together with a pair of pliers while drilling. Just drill very gently and slowly while doing these. 1mm thick magnets were my only choice here really. And that's it. It's nothing too fancy, and I hope this video has given you some ideas on how to magnetise your own vehicles. If it has, please consider subscribing or leaving a comment below. I'd be really interested to hear what you think. You can use it on almost anything. Earlier this year I magnetised my own Dreadnaught, which was actually a lot easier than the Gladiator Tank, and I've used exactly the same methods I've described here. I like magnetising because it makes it much easier to pack vehicles like this into storage, and it helps prevent them getting damaged in transit. But more importantly, it saves cash, and that means more miniatures. But not for me. I've promised myself I'm not going to buy anything more until I finish my Blood Angels army. So until my next video, remember, enjoy your painting, have fun, and I'll see you soon.